Hi, you guys. Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. We're on week 4 and we're in the home stretch here. We're almost there. So hopefully, especially with this last week and what you've been doing over the previous 2 weeks, you're starting to feel a little bit different inside your bodies. Maybe you're feeling a little less bloated. Maybe you have more energy. Maybe your sleep's a little bit better. And maybe your clothes are fitting you a little bit better as well. So I'm hoping that you're seeing some changes. If nothing else, you're getting to know yourselves better. I hope that you were able to read the email that I sent on Tuesday from Dr. Gottfried. I just basically kind of cut and pasted what came over to me. She's in the process of writing a new book, and if you'll remember, she was the author of the book that I recommended to all of you last week on hormones, and she's written The Hormone Cure. She's written another book since then, and I know she's coming out with another book, and she's looking in this book at the specific genes that contribute to us being either um, tendency towards being fat or have a tendency towards having a difficult time detoxifying, and also have a tendency towards staying up late at night. So we have what she calls a fatso gene, and actually I don't think she called it that, but it was coined that. And then the clock gene, and that is for people that have a difficult time with circadian rhythm, which means a difficult time, going to sleep when the sun goes down and coming awake when the sun comes up. Basically, that's our natural circadian rhythm. And then also the detoxer gene. The interesting thing is, and which is one of the reasons why I sent this to you, is that the solution she had for each one of those genes was a little bit different for each one of those genes. But I'm hoping that you kind of cued in or were able to see that what she's recommending to turn these genes off is everything that we're doing here. So, isn't that wonderful? You don't have to do anything more. So I just like to remind you that our genes are about 20%, maybe 25% of who we are. And then our lifestyles and what we eat turn on and off our genes. So that's even a bigger portion of what's going to be expressed. So genes, there is gene expression, and there's a ways of turning genes on and off. And what we've been doing here for the last 3 weeks is basically turning the genes off. Okay, I want to make sure you can all hear me. If you can't hear me, please raise your hand. So nice to see you all here and some more coming on. And again, if you want to look at that email, you can look at it. It's on Tuesday. I know you get a lot of emails, so I totally get it. But I also want to just point out, if anyone thinks they have the clock gene where their circadian rhythms are off and it's a difficult time for them to go to sleep at a decent hour, and it really does make a difference in how we age and put laying down fat in the middle area of our body, please let me know and I can help you with that. Before we delve into this week's plan, what we're going to do as far as eating and the topic of, or basically just kind of 2 topics of the webinar tonight, it's about digestion. I have to touch on that before I let you go. And I'm also going to touch on intermittent fasting. And if you've already looked at your notebook, you'll see that on week 4 we do talk about it. And it's a kind of a fascinating subject, I find. And I'm finding out more and more about it. And I'm even experimenting with it. But before we delve into all that, I would like to know if you'd like to share if you were able to take out all grains. And if you were able to take out all grains, what was it like for you and what did you put in instead? And if you'd like to write that in the chat box or raise your hand to share anything with us, that would be great. I would love to know how you're feeling overall. And again, either raise your hand or write in the chat box so I can share that with everybody. A couple of people did share on Facebook, and I will read to you basically what they said while you're either writing or raising your hand. And if you don't want to share, totally fine, okay? So Jeanette, who's always very generous in her thoughts, she wrote here her biggest number 1 issue for her starting this was giving up coffee, and she had written that that was her life's blood. That's what was coursing through her veins. And this is her second or third time she's done the detox, and she has noticed that each time that when she does try to eliminate the coffee, it gets a little bit easier. And it's interesting that she notes that there is kind of like a muscle memory when we give up something and or we go off the path and then we try to come back. It seems to be a little bit easier for our body to go, oh yeah, I kind of remember this. So that's interesting. And one of the ways that it was easy for her, or made it easier for her, was to cut back on the caffeine by 1 cup a day. So, and that helped her. And she's been caffeine free for over 10 days, and she only had one bad day of craving for it. Her number 2 issue or hard thing to get rid of was sugar, and what she finds is that if she eats a small piece of fruit and drinks a glass of water, that tends to take care of it. So good for you figuring out what seems to help you. And then she also misses white rice, which is interesting. And there's probably one particular thing that we kind of miss and we kind of crave. And for her, it's white rice. And I'm wondering if she's tried the cauliflower rice and how that's done with her. And she's not on the call tonight, so we can't ask her. And then she also wrote she misses eating cheaply. And boy, we could have a whole webinar on that. Maybe I'll even address that next week if you would like me to. True, we are spending more money when we buy almond flour versus white flour, or when we buy coconut flour versus white flour, or even buckwheat. And we are spending more money when we eat grass-fed meat, which I don't do a whole lot of because of that. But organic is more expensive than run-of-the-mill. So you are spending a little bit more money. When it comes to fruits and vegetables, the dirty dozen are the ones that we need to avoid. The other vegetables and fruits that are not on that list, you can go ahead and buy non-organic and probably be okay. So it might seem like we're spending more money, but I'm wondering, when we really cut back and start preparing our own foods the best that we can, and when we cut back on the junk, we're probably eating less, and we're satiated with better items. And so the amount of food, I'm wondering if that's less, and if we're eating less than the amount of food, if in fact we're kind of coming back to an equivalent. That aside, also there is no trading how we feel when we eat well, what our productivity level is, what our mindset is, our emotional mindset, as well as how we're going to feel 10, 20 years down the road, and the medical costs that we are going to save on because we're doing something now. Okay, so there is no trade-off, and we're kind of, doing one for the other. If there's any way that you can create a garden, even if it's just on your balcony, where you can grow tomatoes, or a fruit tree or something like that, or even create a community garden, that's where I would love to go. I would love to start doing that. Then she also said it's a little odd. And the reason why I'm reading all of these is because I'm just making a guess that all of you have run into this in one way or another, at least 2 or 3 of these. She also wrote that it sometimes feels odd at a social or work event. I sometimes feel like a closet eater, avoiding events or eating before I go so I'm not tempted to stray. So eating before you go so you're not really hungry is probably a good idea. And as you get better at this and learning how to pick and choose, it'll become easier. I do find that I can pretty much go to any event and find something to eat. And even if I go to an event, and this has happened, where they just have sandwiches and maybe fruit and maybe a little salad, but no protein or cheese or anything like that on that, and I know I'm hungry, I will take 1 or 2 sandwiches and I will pick it apart and not eat the bread and just eat the insides. And people want to see what I'm doing, that's fine. And the interesting thing is more and more people are are acknowledging that they really don't like eating gluten and grains, and so more and more restaurants and more events are starting to cater towards that. So yes, there's an art to it, and we have to know that. I mean, sometimes if I know I'm kind of in a spot and I don't want to eat the desserts there, usually I'm pretty good, but I might even bring a chocolate coconut macaroon with me or two. And that way I know I get to have my sweet. I get to still be with people because eating is social. And, they get curious and you don't have to feel self-conscious. And maybe you bring an extra one or two so they get to taste it too. So I think coming out of the closet is the best thing to do rather than stay in the closet and let other people know what you're doing and you actually inspire them. So Sally also shared, and what she said is, what I would like to share is that I truly appreciate the suggestions for substitutes. And I think having suggestions for substitutes is really important, or we kind of go, what do I do? And she acknowledges that the more I eat right, the more I can tell when I don't, which is wonderful. One of the hardest things for me is carving out the time to be prepared with all of the alternatives. Yes, there is a learning curve, and the more of the items you get in your house, the more you start preparing, like maybe one new recipe a week or however you need to do it. You become more adept at this, and it just becomes a little more second nature eventually, okay? It's a slow process. You can't do it all at once, but just putting one foot in front of the other, making little changes is going to lead to much bigger changes. So phenomenal. Um, so she's getting better, and because I can tell the difference now, it gives me motivation to eat well on a regular basis. Yay! We have to feel something different in order to stick with something that is a little bit harder and out of our comfort zone. And we'll get away from it again, and then we'll be reminded we don't feel good, and we'll come back to what does feel good. And that's just how life is, just how we are. It's human nature. Okay, I'm going to come up here. So Sally wrote that she wasn't able to go grain-free. That's perfectly fine. That's a big leap, you guys. In fact, this is probably the first year I've asked the group to go grain-free. Usually I just say gluten and dairy. So I was taking you a step further. That was a big leap. If you just were able to do gluten-free, that's awesome. Okay? So this is the first time I've ever asked a group to do that, and that was a huge leap. Okay, thanks for your confession, by the way. I'm sure you're not alone, trust me. I am going to switch over here because I don't see any hands or questions up here. I am going to switch over to our webinar, and I'm going to turn me off for now. And I love this slide. You're going to see it again. So this is kind of the evolution of man. We were hunters, gatherers, and we were lean, and then we now have food all around us, and this is really how we are looking. I would say 50+%, I would say, look like this across the nation, and it is a sad state of affairs. But you see this beautiful soda. Yeah, it's pretty sad. Okay, we're going to get into our gut. Our gut is actually our second brain, which is why you see an image of a brain up here. It actually has its own, what did I want to say? It has its own nervous system. My goodness, how hard is that? It's interesting that we're talking about the gut because I have a little bug, and this is what's happening. I'm finding is that I can't find the words, so please forgive me. I'm feeling much better, but it's just a reminder that when the digestive system is not working well, wow, what a difference in how we feel. So it's one of my favorite subjects in the whole world because it has such a far-reaching effect. When the digestive system isn't working properly, it affects our moods, it affects how our brain works, it affects our skin, it affects our energy, our detoxification ability. It is, again, so far-reaching, and it can be a great source of inflammation. And those who know me know that this is my weak spot, and so I've had a lot of inflammatory problems and issues with my digestive system many years ago, not many years, probably about, gosh, 8 to 10 years ago. There was a 2-year period where it got pretty ugly. So I know what it feels like, and I know what it can do for people. That wasn't, when you guys gave me your results for your gut quizzes, it wasn't a big one. That stuck up for a lot of people, but I still want to go through it because I think it's so important. So, what is our gut, our second brain, responsible for? Well, a lot of things. One is killing pathogens and parasites that can come in through our food, through our hands, that can harm us, okay? So that our stomach acid is extremely, extremely important for doing that. It is where the majority of our serotonin is made, and a lot of people don't realize that. So when I have someone that comes in that is depressed or anxious, I always look at the digestive system. It's also where B vitamins are made available. And again, if you recall, our B vitamins are essential for our detoxification ability. Our liver uses that in the phase 1. It's also crucial in making neurotransmitters and for heart health. So hello, right there. Again, we go back to how much is the gut playing a role in our psychological health, our brain health, and our heart health. 90% of our immune system resides in our digestive tract, and I don't think most people realize that. So again, how much are we sick or how much we have an immune system that overreacts can also be traced back to the digestive system. It's responsible for breaking down the food we eat, obviously, digestion, and then it's also responsible for absorbing these life-sustaining nutrients that we get from the food we eat and the breaking down. So we are not always just the food that we eat, because if we can't break down what we eat, we got a problem. It's also responsible for preventing irritants and toxins from reaching the brain, because there's a barrier between what is in our digestive tract and the rest of our body and our brain. So extremely important. So if there is a break or a breach in that tube, and because the digestive system is really one big long tube, then we've got a problem elsewhere. So let's look at what are some of the signs of a compromised digestive system would look like. And I've got 2 slides here. And this first one is obviously that signs are directly connected to something that would be a symptom that would be happening in the digestive system. Okay, so these are kind of obvious. Heartburn, acid reflux, stomach distension, bloating right after you eat would be indication of low stomach acid. Bloating otherwise could be digestive enzymes, or you've got bacteria in the wrong place. Upper abdominal pain, indigestion, belching, gastritis, ulcers, IBS, nausea, halitosis, undigested food in the stools, food sensitivities, colitis, and Crohn's. So these are all directly related with the digestive tract. But other signs of a compromised digestive tract would be fatigue, eczema, low levels of vitamin B12 and 6, yeast infections, urinary tract infections, which can be the etiology of that could be a systemic yeast infection. Mood disorders, depression, anxiety, which I've kind of already mentioned. Elevated C-reactive protein, so if there's a lot of inflammation going on in the digestive tract, that can push that number up. Hormonal imbalances, migraines, thyroid issues. Even though most of your thyroid is converted from the inactive to the active form in your liver, some of that is also done in your gut. Autoimmune diseases, so we have a lot of inflammation and the immune system overreacts. We'll get an autoimmune where it starts attacking itself, and that's really what rheumatoid arthritis is Hashimoto's is, which is related to the thyroid. Behavior disorders, ADD, autism, OCD, huge with what we put into our digestive system and the integrity of the digestive tract's ability to digest, and also that there is no, again, breach in between the cell walls so that a food can go out into the body and it's looked at as a foreign particle. And then fibromyalgia, where there's a lot of pain going on, and brain fog. So if I have someone come in with any of these symptoms, I will always look at the digestive system, regardless whether it's obvious or not. Okay, so our digestive system is one long tube. It starts actually in our mouth because digestion actually starts in the mouth. You know that if you've ever eaten cotton candy. It just immediately starts to melt, and that is the enzyme amylase that is in your saliva. So it starts there, the bolus of the food moves down the esophagus, and it goes into the stomach, and then to the small intestine, and then the large intestine. And we have two, well actually kind of three, organs that play a role in digestion and support the digestive process. And one is the liver. And why is that? Well, the liver produces bile, and bile is crucial in, one, pulling toxins out. Two, it's also crucial in breaking down fats. So bile is produced in the liver, and then it's stored in the gallbladder, and then it comes trickling into the digestive system. And then the pancreas is also another support organ because it produces pancreatic enzymes, and these enzymes or digestive enzymes are responsible for digesting our food. If we don't have adequate amounts of enzymes, we're going to have a problem in digesting our food, and it's going to cause a lot of inflammation and probably a lot of nutrient deficiencies as well. So this whole system here houses about 100 trillion bacteria, which, when you put that all together, they have more DNA, like 10 to 1 to ours, to our DNA. So they're really top dog over us, and we want to take care and make sure that we have the right type of bacteria in our digestive system in order to support us. So they're kind of top dog. B vitamins I already talked about. Not only does our stomach acid make B vitamins available, but it also contributes to, or our digestive system also makes B vitamins, or helps to. Where am I? Okay, the stomach. So we've got hydrochloric acid in the stomach, and the three things, I've kind of already mentioned them, the B vitamins, it makes it available. So if we are taking an antacid or Prilosec, which I think is probably, or Nexium is probably the second most, I just read this, second most prescribed prescription over after statins. Scary, okay? So if we push down the amount of hydrochloric acid that our stomach, or reduce it, we're going to have a problem with our B vitamins and absorbing them and having them available to us. And again, if you remember that I talked about B vitamins having to do with brain health, if you realize how many older people are on antacids and how much dementia there is, there's a direct correlation that I don't think doctors are getting. And then we've got it's responsible for breaking down proteins into our amino acids, into smaller building blocks. You know, I didn't put this up here, but our stomach acid is also part of breaking down carbohydrates too, simple and more fibrous. So if we're not breaking food down in the stomach, that means that as it goes into the small intestine, it's going to be in the small intestine much, much longer. Because the proper work hasn't been done up here, and the enzymes have to do the work a little bit more. So what's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is usually we get more constipated, and there can be a migration of bacteria which should be in the large intestine that migrates up to the small intestine, And if we've got food that's not being digested, guess what? These little bacteria love feeding on that food and can grow. And that's when we have a small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, which is a huge problem and an underlying problem of IBS. So that was just a lot of information. I don't know how much you guys were able to take in with that one, but I'm kind of stuck on the digestive system because I've been talking to a lot of people about that lately, a lot of clients. Okay, and again, it sterilizes our food. The stomach acid does. Okay, small intestine. The role of the small intestines for digestion, and that's where everything is absorbed as well. And I just talked about SIBO, small intestinal bowel overgrowth. That's the acronym for that, and IBS, how that's related. Didn't really talk about leaky gut directly, but that is when, your digestive system is only one cell layer thick, okay? So if we have damage to that, it can create irritation and inflammation, and the cells will start having they don't fit together real nicely, so they'll become a little gap, and that's why we call it leaky gut. And I already alluded to the fact that when we have a leaky gut, food particles come out of the gut, and that's when we can have food allergies. And what causes leaky gut can be celiac disease, it can be a difficult time digesting, low stomach acid, a variety of reasons. So we always want to heal the gut and heal that gut lining. The large intestines are basically responsible for eliminating waste and toxins. It's very important to move those toxins out and have at least one daily bowel movement a day. And it's also a place where our water is reabsorbed. So if our stools are really hard, that means they've probably been sitting in there for a while and a lot of water has had a chance to be absorbed. If you're not drinking enough water, then we're not hydrating the colon and or the stools enough. If you find that you have watery stools, that means that it's probably the peristalsis is too quickly for one reason or another. Your body is trying to get this out and not enough water is being absorbed. It doesn't have the chance to be absorbed. This is where we'll see some parasites and yeast and bacterial infections. We can also see a little bit of yeast upstream. And I already talked about the amount of DNA in your gut or in the gut bacteria. Okay, I already talked about the liver, so we're going to go on to the gut's biggest enemies. So bad irritating food, which would be your processed, fiberless, chemically and sugar-laden foods, gluten, GMOs. So pretty much your standard American diet or your SAD diet is going to be irritating. And everyone's a little bit different. Some people are fine with gluten, some people are fine with dairy, some people are fine with grains. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to be the same, but I would say processed, fiberless, and chemically sugar-laden foods and GMOs are the biggest culprits here, okay? And so we need to work on getting those out. Antibiotics, oh my goodness, kills off our good bacteria and sets us up for so much havoc. It sets us up for the bad bacteria to come in. It sets us up for yeast to start growing. And once that starts proliferating, it can play havoc on a lot of people. And I know that firsthand. Medications such as hormones. And so if you're on hormone replacement or birth control, especially if the birth control is basically progesterone, it can alter the flora, the bacteria in the digestive system. I'm not quite sure the mechanism, but for some reason it can kind of fight with the good bacteria and kind of open the door for yeast. So I am not a big fan of oral progesterone cream. I'm a bigger fan of, and again, not everyone's going to be sensitive, but if someone has a sensitive digestive system, I would definitely avoid oral progesterone. Steroids can also alter acid blockers. Nexium is problem. I already talked about that. Ibuprofen, Benadryl, and even aspirin, including that baby aspirin that doctors give a lot of their heart patients, or even before they have a heart problem. You know, aspirin does reduce inflammation, but how about finding out what the inflammation is, okay, instead of just squashing it down? So even baby aspirin can irritate the stomach lining in some people. Food allergies can be a culprit, a big enemy. So gluten and dairy are usually the biggest ones, but even um, non-gluten grains for some people can be a problem, which is why I kind of pushed the envelope this time just to see if any of you would notice a difference. And if you weren't able to take it out your non-gluten grains, so like buckwheat and quinoa and rice and things like that, um, you don't have to do that now, or you can choose to do that next week, or it's something you can put in the back of your head and try it out and just see how differently you eat and what happens to your body. So it's staying curious when you're ready. I've done it for the very first time, and I talk about this stuff. Um, Probably in the last month or two was the very first time that I went grain-free. All right, pathogens, parasites and yeast overgrowth are definitely an enemy. Caffeine and alcohol, mainly because it irritates the stomach lining. Caffeine can also stimulate the bowel in some people, so we kind of have to watch that if it actually irritates it. So, okay. Oh, one last one here. Hello. Oops, nope. Where's my... It's not going to do it for me. Well, stress was the last one that should have been on here, because that's a big one. Stress plays a huge role in how well the digestive system is working. So it was in big red, and I don't know why it didn't show up. Okay, so how can we heal the digestive system? Well, basically using the 4R protocol, which means we're going to remove the offending agents, we're going to replace it or support it, and then we're going to re-inoculate it and repair. So real quickly, I'm going to go through this, okay? Probably more information than what you guys need, but we want to remove, obviously, anything that's causing allergies, so specifically gluten and dairy, additives, GMOs, and grains for a lot of people. We want to remove the parasites and pathogens. How do you find out whether or not you have these? You do a stool test, the type that I use, a functional medicine one. We also want to remove the bad bacteria and yeast. How do you know if you have that? Same way, through the stool test. SIBO, you want to get rid of that bad bacteria in the small intestine. That's also a different test. Stressors. Even if that means people, we need to get them out of our lives, or we need to put them at arm's length, or we need to learn how to handle them differently. Okay, sometimes we can't just push people out of our lives, although often we can, we don't think we can, or maybe we don't want to, but we need to have different ways of coping with it, or it's going to kill you. Okay, removing the alcohol and caffeine, which we've done, removing sugar, removing artificial chemicals and toxins, and medications, as many as we possibly can. We want to replace with dietary fiber. So these things here basically support and soothe. So dietary fiber can help pull toxins out and also help to get the digestive system moving a little bit better. Betaine HCl is the stomach acid. You can actually take stomach acid if you have a lower amount, and some people just genetically have lower amounts than others. Stress can play a role in that. I know myself, I tend to be a low producer of HCl, and at one time I was able to take 10 plus capsules of betaine HCl, which is an incredible amount. And now once in a while I have to take one if I'm really stressed. My stomach acid just kind of shuts down. But it's amazing to go from one extreme to being pretty normal most of the time. So it can happen. Digestive enzymes. So as we're trying to figure things out, to take digestive enzymes to help with digesting our food is extremely important. So again, these are all support things. Herbs that aid in digestion would be ginger. Papaya is not a herb. And cayenne's a spice. So how about natural food sources? Would be ginger, papaya, and cayenne. Aloe is also another source. Foods that soothe would be lemon, big time, and there's essential oils out there, D-limonene, which also can be very soothing. A mint can also help with digestion, so that'd be another thing I would put in there. So when we want to, one of the other R's is reinoculate. So we want to reinoculate the system with our probiotics, something called, possibly something called Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a yeast that kills yeast. So that can be really helpful. Fermented foods can be very supportive. So sauerkraut, kombucha, kefir, unsweetened goat or coconut yogurt can be helpful. If you've got a real big overgrowth of yeast or bacteria, these foods aren't going to be able to touch it, but they're great support and maintenance foods. A prebiotic, a prebiotic is a food source that bacteria can feed on. So if we're trying to build up the bacteria in your large intestine, these foods can help it. So it can come from blueberries, bananas, chicory, inulin, and soluble fiber, and potato starch is also really good. Healing the mucosal lining is really important, so the repair part is really important, and I'll look at that question in just a moment. So coconut oil is wonderful for many, many different things. It has natural antibacterial properties. It has medium chain triglycerides, so that's very healing. Bone broth, not bone stock, but bone broth, where it actually the collagen from the bones get cooked out into the broth, is very supportive. Something called zinc carnosine is extremely effective at healing the stomach lining. So I found that very effective myself. Vitamin C, peppermint oil, aloe vera. Glutamine is an amino acid that heals the stomach lining or the small intestine as well. Berberine is a great natural antibiotic. Essential fatty acids, so your omega-3s is really important. And then the last thing is making sure that we have healthy adrenal function. And what I have found is I can repair a digestive system and get it to about 70 to 75%. But if there is adrenal dysfunction or fatigue, I can't seem to get it that other 20 to 25%. So we always have to look at that. There's going back and forth between the adrenal function and the digestive system. Okay, let me come up here. How much fiber are we trying to consume daily? You know, I don't know the exact gram, Sally. Hi. I don't count those grams. I guess if I was to answer that, it would be to have at least 10 servings of fruits and vegetables, okay, a day, and then maybe throw in 1 or 2 tablespoons of flaxseed and or psyllium husk, and it kind of depends on your bowel movements and digestive system. So that's how I would answer that. I don't really look at the grams. I look more at the foods. For healing the mucosa, oh, are we to take, okay, Are we to take straight coconut oil for healing mucosal lining, or can we get enough of it in foods? Okay, another great question. If you want to heal the mucosal lining, I would go for the L-glutamine first, okay, or in addition to the coconut oil. L-glutamine, I would, in fact, if you have shakes from Zymogen, you'll notice there's quite a bit amount in the shakes. But I would put that first and foremost. And we're talking about L-glutamine is more effective, I think, with the small intestine and the large intestine. If you are more concerned about healing the stomach lining, that's the zinc carnosine, okay? It's a combination, and it's very effective. And they've done studies where someone's had an alcoholic drink, which inflames the stomach lining, and they'll do zinc carnosine right afterwards, and there's a huge difference in the inflammation just within 30 minutes, okay? Coconut oil. Yes, you can cook it, get it through your food through cooking. You can also do a tablespoon of olive oil, or excuse me, coconut oil in the morning in lieu of your olive oil. I can't do that, but some people like that. Okay? So yes, you can do that. You're welcome. Okay. Hope that was helpful for everybody, and if it wasn't, helpful for Sally. Okay, we're going to move on to what we're going to be doing this week, and it's a little bit different from what I have in your book, and I realize that. I have license to mix things up, don't I? At least I'm taking that license. So I'm going to give you some choices here, okay? You have the option of kind of breaking your fast, if that's what you want to call it, from gluten and grains and maybe even a little bit of dairy slowly, okay? You could slowly start to add foods back in, which would include legumes, non-gluten grains, so your grains, but max 4 servings a week. And if you haven't taken dairy out, that's fine. If you have, you can start putting things in, but I am going to encourage you to try to stay with the goat and sheep cheeses and raw and milk cheeses. Now, I wouldn't put all this in at once because you want to be able to watch what your body does. So that is one option, is to start slowly, putting food back in. Or you can continue what you've been doing for another week, and maybe this week you just keep the saying gluten-free, or maybe you try a couple days of non-gluten grain days, whatever you want to do, okay? So you have the option here. It kind of is nice to go to another week before you start adding foods back in, but again, this is usually the week that we do start doing it. I'm leaving that up to you. If you're using your shakes, you can continue to use shakes for one meal replacement only, okay? And then you can consider incorporating some intermittent fasting also this week. So a lot of different things to choose from, right? So basically it's going back, if you choose, to the vegan food list, all right? And maybe you just do that and consider doing an intermittent fasting day or two this week. So intermittent fasting, again, is on page 51 and page 52, I think. Well, kind of starts with page 50. Okay. And we're going to move to that. All right. So fasting is a controversial subject and a subject that can create fear for some. And it's interesting, it creates fear in me. It's the weirdest thing. So we're going to talk about it tonight. And one of the first things I want to say, kind of a background, is that our bodies really have not changed that much from here. It really has. So we're talking thousands of years here, okay? Has not changed that much as far as the genetics are concerned, but you can tell by looking at this that it has changed tremendously. So the differences back here was obviously we were more active daily. We didn't sit the way we do. But a big thing too is that we as hunters and gatherers, without convenience foods and 7-Elevens and fast foods on every corner, we actually did have intermittent fasting. Okay, if there was not a whole lot of food to eat, we went without. And again, our genes have not changed that much. Also, I mean, some people still do fast for religious reasons now, but I don't think as much as people used to in more ancient times. So I think that is what has changed. And it's interesting, but I did read somewhere that, I don't know if there was one or more studies, where when they just incorporated 1 or 2 days, or one day, I think 16, 18-hour fast per week, that even if a person did not change their diet otherwise, that it benefited them greatly when it came to blood sugar regulation and weight as well. So what are we talking about when we talk about intermittent fasting? Well, basically what it is just a time when you're not eating. It can be, um, 12 hours, 16 hours, or even a 24-hour fast. And what are some of the benefits? It does slow down the aging process, and part of that, what's behind that, is you guys have all heard of free radicals, yeah? And we want our antioxidants to sop up our free radicals. Well, when we eat and digest our food and even burn energy, we naturally toss out free radicals. So if we're going to cut back on what we eat, um, there's going to be fewer free radicals. And also the type of food we eat also makes a difference. But just in general, if we cut back on the amount of food we eat, free radicals are going to be lessened. But free radicals do age us, okay? Uh, it improves our hormone levels, especially insulin sensitivity. It reduces the risk of diabetes and heart disease and even Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's is being coined as type 3 diabetes. They're actually even calling it that in some circles because they're realizing that blood sugar regulation is actually affecting the brain. So, is it safe for everybody? I would say yes. Definitely a 12-hour fast would be safe for everybody. And I would say that even a 16 to 18-hour fast would be safe for everybody. So what's the easiest way of doing a fast? Well, I would say a 12-hour fast from, let's say, 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. That's pretty straightforward. And if you want to do a 16-hour fast, I would recommend that you stop eating whenever you need to. It could be 4 o'clock, 4:30, and then you wait till the 16 hours have passed until probably 7 a.m. in the morning. Now, I attempted a 16-hour fast yesterday. Unfortunately, it was also the day that I think I was coming down with a little bit of a stomach bug, so it didn't work out really well. I think I went 13 hours, and then it's like I had to get something in my stomach. But even just trying it, what I realized was a couple things. One is I ate my last meal at 5:30 and I thought, okay, that means I get to eat again at 9:30 in the morning. And what I realize is I really like to have something to eat first thing in the morning when I pop out of bed. So what I realize I need to do when I do a 16-hour fast, I probably need to do my last meal at about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I just realized that. So it was information for me. And what I would suggest is that your last meal is, high in fiber, so lots of vegetables, lots of good fats, avocados and oils, and then some good protein as well. So a really nice meal that you'll have a slow burn in the way that your body utilizes the energy. You can have teas and even coffee if you want, and lots of water during the fast. You're going to be sleeping through part of that, which is helpful. And I would say break the fast with maybe a really nice green drink and then something really nice for your digestive tract. Uh, you can always try a 24. I wouldn't start with that, but I would start with a 12 and then maybe a 14, then maybe a 16 hour. So that's something maybe you can play with this week. Maybe one 12-hour, just kind of see how it goes. Maybe another 12-hour or a 16-hour. So again, it's a way to push things through, and if I have someone that comes into my office and they're really stuck with their weight, I will definitely have them, and I know what they're eating and they're pretty spot on and they're exercising, I will have them do 1 or 2 days of intermittent fasting during the week to help shift things. Oh, one thing I wanted to say, and then I'll get the question that's posted up here. If we have a ready source of energy, okay, so we're eating like every 2 and 3 hours, and this is kind of magnified for long distance runners and people who train really hard is they train hard and then they'll have a big slug of some type of glucose, and their body actually gets dependent upon that glucose or carbohydrate loading as a source of energy. So it's almost a way of retraining your body to learn how to go into its fat stores and utilize its fat stores for energy. And we used to think that the brain could only use glucose for energy, but that's not true. It can also use ketones, which is um, a my brain, not a side effect, but it is the result of the breakdown of the fat, okay, or ketones, and our brain can actually use that. So again, it's just training our body to learn how to go back into tapping into our fat stores. And so doing that for a week or two could be helpful. You just kind of notice what your body does, and that's something you can always go fall back onto. So something I'm going to be playing with. I already addressed Sally's question. Does not eating while you sleep count? You betcha it counts, and you always want to have that time in there when you're eating as part of that fasting time. Okay, we are almost there, you guys. You are such wonderful audiences. Okay, so the last little gift or something I want you to maybe incorporate. It's an easy one. It's an easy one. This week are these two things. It will only take maybe 5 or 10 minutes to do both of them. In the morning, write down 3 things that you're grateful for. And why is this? So here again, and this goes back to what Barbara was talking about in week 2, was to shift the way our mind thinks. And it actually does shift the limbic system and the whole wiring of how we do things. So something as easy as writing down 3 things that we're grateful for is making us notice and making us pause. And then in the evening, write down your wins for the day, at least 2 or 3. And I'm talking as small as I didn't eat that piece of pie, or I caught myself with an automatic negative thought, and I caught myself, and I even put one positive thought in. Or maybe another win is, I didn't put that thing in my mouth, or another win is I breathed, a meditative breath for maybe 5 minutes during the day, or I moved, or I did something different, or I went to the store and I bought some almond flour, or I'm getting my kitchen set up, whatever it is. Or maybe it's you just did a great job at work, or you made someone's day different, or you made your day different. Whatever it is, okay, we have to stop and acknowledge these. And when we do that, it changes something inside of us. So I invite you to do that. And keeping a journal is a good way of keeping track of these things because we forget. And sometimes we can get so poopy thinking that we need to go back to that journal and just look at where we were and what's been happening and just go, all right, we're okay. All right, so that's a really nice habit to start. So maybe your win is just buying a really nice journal for yourself. Maybe your win is the fact that you're even writing it down or thinking about it. Okay, I'm going to be quiet, and this is the time for you guys to raise your hands or write in the chat box. Okay, how do you get the zinc stuff, the zinc carnosine for stomach? Oh gosh, yes, it's really good for helping acid reflux. And yes, you can get the zinc carnosine through Zymogen. Yes, so if you have an account with Zymogen, go ahead and order it, or you can order it from me. I think Designs for Health also has a zinc carnosine product. Orthomolecular might also, okay? So, and how much do you need? You know what? I'm going to have to look. I don't have the zinc carnosine through Zymogen is the product name is called PEP. Um, PEPSI, PEPSI, and then a big X. That's the product name at Zymogen. And I don't remember how much of the zinc carnosine is in there, and I don't have a bottle on me. And it is good for helping with acid reflux. And Jeff, I'm wondering, when you take gluten out, does that help? And also, when you take all grains out, do you notice a difference? I'm curious if you've tried that and if there's a difference. By the way, going back to acid reflux, it can be caused by stress, but it can also be caused by a little bug called H. pylori. So if you've never been tested for that, I highly recommend that. Of course, a couple different things that also can aggravate acid reflux would be alcohol, because it relaxes the sphincter in between the esophagus and the stomach, and so it can allow for the acid to come up through that sphincter into the esophagus. That can be a problem. Coffee can aggravate the stomach lining. So all those things you might want to take into consideration, okay? All right, anybody else? I'll wait for questions. If you have to leave, I wish you good night and a good week. And next week is our last webinar, our last time together. For me this time, this has gone by really, really fast. I hope it has for you too, and I hope you've gotten a lot out of it. So I'm not seeing any more questions or hands. You guys have my email. You can always ask there, and thank you as well, and good night. All right, everybody, enjoy your evening. Thank you. Bye.